1940s, post-World War II, the film production studio Walt Disney Productions was on an absolute tear and was quickly becoming a household name. With marketable and likable characters such as Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, Snow White, Pinocchio, how could you go wrong? And the characters garnered millions of young fans across the country. Now apparently these young fans used to write company founder and head Walt Disney asking if they could come visit where these animated films were put together and made. Now this made Walt go, Now he conjured up an idea to build a small 8-acre amusement park adjacent to his production studio in Burbank, California. Now Walt Disney, being the dreamer that he was, the small little 8-acre project he had in mind quickly turned into something much larger. And this led in to the largest investment in Walt's life. A site was chosen 27 miles southeast of Los Angeles, California, in the town of Anaheim. 160 acres of land was purchased, and in the summer of 1954, the Mickey Mouse Park, as the project was originally called, broke ground. The project was quickly renamed Disneyland, and Walt started a television show called Walt Disney's Disneyland, forming a partnership with the American television network ABC, thus being able to finance the park and promote the park. So 1 year and 1 month after construction began, on July 17th, 1955, Disneyland opened to the general public. The park opened with 5 themed lands: Main Street USA, Adventureland, Frontierland, Fantasyland, and Tomorrowland. And there were 18 attractions present on opening day, most notably the Disneyland Railroad, Jungle Cruise, Mad Tea Party, the Mark Twain Riverboat, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, Peter Pan's Flight, Snow White Enchanted Wish, Autopia, and the Storybook Land Canal Boats. Now, opening day was an absolute nightmare. It was 101 degrees. There was double the amount of people in the park that they expected because about 15,000 of them hopped the gate, snuck in, had a fake ticket, weren't supposed to be there. There were no drinking fountains due to a plumber's strike. And on top of that, shortly after opening, like 2 hours, a gas leak forced half the park to close. But Walt Disney, being a fighter, brushed it off and continued on, and later that year opened another attraction, the legendary Dumbo. Now the first year of operation was a smash hit. As Walt predicted it would be. The dude was different, huh? And they brought in a total of 5 million guests that first season. The following year, in 1956, we had a bunch of new attractions added. As we saw the addition of the giant walkthrough attraction, Tom Sawyer Island, maybe the most underrated thing in all of the Disney parks, the Astro Jets, the Davy Crockett Explorer canoes, and the Disneyland Skyway connecting Tomorrowland and Fantasyland via a gondola ride. And also that year we had the addition of some on-site lodging as we saw the debut of the Disneyland Hotel, the OG Disney Resort. 1957 saw the first Disney parks hiccup, I guess you could call it, an oopsie-doodle, if you will, as we saw the debut of a new land, Holidayland. Behind Adventureland, it was a separate gated admission, and all it was a big picnic area with a circus tent and a baseball field and no shade whatsoever. In 1958, we saw 2 new attractions added to the park. A new dark ride in Alice in Wonderland, and another boat ride around the rivers of America, this one the sailing ship Columbia. In the last year of the 1950s, we saw the park continue to grow as we got 4 new attractions. The absolutely legendary Disneyland Monorail, which was the first daily monorail system in the western half of this world. The Sleeping Beauty Castle Walkthrough, Submarine Voyage, and the first tubular steeled roller coaster ever. Manufactured by Aerodynamics, was their very first coaster they ever did. And of course we were talking about the Matterhorn bobsleds. 1961, we saw the removal of Holidayland as it was acknowledged that that was a really bad idea. 1962 saw the park add a fun house with a fun spin on it, as we saw the debut of the Swiss Family Treehouse. 1963 was the year Disney parks changed forever, as we saw the very first audio animatronic installed within a Disney park. We're talking about the debut of the Enchanted Tiki Room. In the following year, 1964, we saw the removal of the Astro Jets, and it was replaced by another spinning rocket ship attraction, the Tomorrowland Jets. The following year, in 1965, we saw the idea of the audio animatronic taken to another level, in the form of Abraham Lincoln, as we saw the debut of Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. 1966, we got the addition of a new area. Occupying the former grounds of Holidayland, we got the debut of New Orleans Square. Also that year over in Fantasyland, we got the debut of an absolutely legendary attraction. It took the idea of the animatronic to a whole nother level. And I am talking about the mind-numbingness that is It's a Small World. But the biggest news of that year was not good news, as park founder and company head Walt Disney passed away from lung cancer. But of course the Walt Disney Company at this time was way bigger than one man, and the show must go on. In the following year, we saw Tomorrowland get a huge refurb, and we saw the addition of the People Mover, Carousel of Progress, an attraction designed by Walt Disney himself, and the third installation of a spinning rocket ride attraction, this one called Rocket Jets. Now you think with all that going on, that would be the big news of the year, but it wasn't, because on the opposite end of the park in Adventureland, a certain attraction opened up, Pirates of the Caribbean, and is still to this day one of the most popular attractions in any Walt Disney park. 2 years later, in 1969, New Orleans Square got its anchor attraction, and just like Pirates of the Caribbean, is still one of the most popular attractions in all of Walt Disney's parks, and we're talking about Haunted Mansion. In 1971, we saw the Walt Disney Company open its second theme park, this one just outside of Orlando, Florida, as we saw the grand opening of Magic Kingdom. And its layout is almost an exact replica of Disneyland, which goes on to prove how damn near perfect of a park Walt Disney designed when he came up with Disneyland. The following year, in 1972, the park got a small expansion with the debut of a new land, Bear Country, and coming with it, the first attraction that debuted at Magic Kingdom and went over so well, they replicated it at Disneyland. Of course, I mean Country Bear Jamboree. In 1973, we saw the Carousel of Progress closed up, packed up, and moved over to Florida to Magic Kingdom. Now, with a lot of focus being on Walt Disney World in Florida at this time, Disneyland kind of took a back seat and really didn't get much for the remainder of the decade. With the exception of 1977 when the park received Space Mountain, an in-house built dark roller coaster which is a replica of Magic Kingdom's version, but many people consider the Disneyland version much better. 1979 saw the debut of another iconic attraction within the park's gates, the legendary family coaster known as Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. Jump skipping ahead to 1982, we saw Mr. Toad's Wild Ride close for a refurbishment and reopen later that year. In 1983, it was Fantasyland's turn for a refurb, and we got the addition of a new dark ride in Pinocchio's Daring Journey. 1986 saw the addition of the Magic Eye Theater, showcasing various 3D films over its lifetime, most notably Captain EO. 1987, we got a legendary 3D motion simulator in Star Tours. 1988 saw Bear Country get renamed to Critter Country, and the following year, we saw Critter Country add its most legendary attraction to date, the insanely highly themed log flume known as Splash Mountain. 3 years later, in 1992, we saw the original Sleeping Beauty walkthrough attraction through the castle close its doors, but we got the addition of an amazing nighttime fireworks laser show known as Fantasmic. 1993 saw a new area added to the park, all the way in the back behind Fantasyland, a kids area known as Mickey's Toontown. In the following year, we saw Mickey's Toontown add its marquee attraction, Roger Rabbit Cartoon Spin. Also that year was the final year of operation for the Disneyland Skyway. 1995 saw a second on-site lodging option added, as we saw Disney buy the Pan Pacific Hotel right across the street and rename it the Disneyland Pacific Hotel. Also that year we got the addition of a dark ride on steroids up in Adventureland, the addition of Indiana Jones Adventure Temple of the Forbidden Eye. And to close out that year we got the tragic news of the removal of the People Mover. How could you get rid of the People Mover? 2 years later, in 1997, we saw another attraction removed from Tomorrowland as we said goodbye to Rocket Jets. And then shortly after that, it was announced that Tomorrowland would be getting a hefty refurbishment. In the following year, for 1998, we saw the removal of the submarine voyage, but the addition of 3 new attractions. Another version of a rocket ship spinner attraction, this one known as Astro Orbiter. We also got a 2-story building showcasing technology and innovations, known as Innoventions. And last but not least, the biggest what the attraction ever added to any Disney park, in the infamous Rocket Rods. 1999 saw the Swiss Family Treehouse get rethemed and rebranded to Tarzan's Treehouse. And to start off the new millennium, we saw the Disneyland Pacific Hotel get renamed and rethemed to Disney's Paradise Pier. 2001 saw the removal of 2 attractions, of course rocket rides, because that was a really f***ing stupid idea. Structural damage, of course, and Country Bear Jamboree, which, kind of sad. But 2001 is easily most remembered for Disneyland becoming its own resort, as right next door we saw the addition of a second theme park in Disney's California Adventure, Downtown Disney, a shopping and entertainment district, and another on-site hotel, and the newest still to this day, Disney's Grand Californian. And now, the entire resort is referred to as Disneyland, and the park Disneyland, according to Disney, is referred to as Disneyland Park. 2 years later in 2003, we finally got word on what would replace the Country Bear Jamboree building, and that was a dark ride known as The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. 2 years after that, in 2005, was Disneyland's 50th anniversary, and we also got the addition of an indoor dark shooter in Tomorrowland known as Buzz Lightyear's Astro Blasters. 2007, we saw the park take advantage of the submarine voyage attraction that had closed almost a decade prior to this, and we got Finding Nemo submarine voyage. In the following year, in 2008, we saw the Sleeping Beauty Castle walkthrough attraction reopen. 2010 saw the Star Tours motion simulator get a nice touch-up, and was now known as Star Tours The Adventure Continues. 2010 was the absolute most quiet time frame in the park's history. Nothing happened in that decade, really, except the removal of the Magic Eye Theater and Innoventions. But midway through that decade, something huge was announced. A brand new area that would be built in the back left corner of the park. We're talking about Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, which opened in 2019. Opening with the land was Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run, an interactive motion simulator. Shortly after Galaxy's Edge opened, that area received one of the most technologically advanced theme park attractions ever constructed, Rise of the Resistance. And shortly after Rise of the Resistance opened, 2020 hit us all, and the Disneyland Resort was shut down, along with pretty much the entire world. The resort did eventually reopen. It probably took a little longer than it should have, but whatever, Disneyland reopened. And in 2023, it was announced that Mickey's Toontown will be getting a refurb, most notably coming with it a trackless dark ride known as Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. And also Tarzan's Treehouse will be getting a touch-up, and will now be referred to as the Adventureland Treehouse. And in 2024, Splash Mountain will be getting a re-theme and a refurb, and will reopen as Tiana's Bayou Adventure. Disneyland is arguably the most important theme park ever built. Arguably. Its hub and spoke layout is the quintessential theme park design and has been replicated dozens of times since its opening. With its seemingly endless lineup of family attractions, a handful of thrill attractions, you could easily spend 2 to 3 full days within the park's gates and maybe get everything done. That's saying quite a lot. It's the second most visited theme park in the world, and it truly is one of the most magical places on Earth.